Hi. Okay, I promised to do a Facebook Live a while back, and well, here it is. I'd like to thank everybody for being in the group and all those people who've shared and recommended me. I don't know why, because I'm not really a data protection expert, but you know, sort of tried to get my head around it. So what I'd first like to say is everything I say, everything I put up, it's not coming from somebody who has any experience in data protection or legal matters for that sake. I just basically, as a foot health practitioner, decided that we needed to do it. I put it off for months and months and months, had a look at it and thought, whoa, what on earth is this? And the only way I could do it was by trying to understand it. So I went in, read the policy and really tried to get my head around it the best I could, and then just started writing, really. And I tried to basically do everything they said on the basis I could cut things out afterwards. So anyways, that sort of it started off a few friends and I getting together, and we thought we'd share our information, and the group's kind of grown from there. So I've put recently up everything I've done, basically, and I hope you found it helpful. But again, I really don't know how right it is, whether it's too much, whether it's not enough, whether the information is right or not. It's really hard to know what the ICO, actually want from you. So anyway, I'll go through some of the stuff I actually wrote in that file I put up, because sometimes it's easier. When I looked at it, it was like nearly 10,000 words. Hi Belinda, thank you for being here. And when I looked through it, I thought, oh, how people can understand that? It's just words upon words upon words. Hi Alice. So I thought it might be easier to just sort of also go through and just talk about it. And if anybody wants to ask questions, or what if it brings anything you haven't thought of before, and if you've got any advice as well, that would be fabulous. Right, I'll start off with registration and my experience of registration. It appears that people are told different things, and even with giving them the same information. Some people are told to register, some people are told not to. I personally was told not to. I rang them twice, actually, two different people, and they said not to. But to be honest with you, I think I might register anyway. Because you just don't know if you're right or wrong on this. Who knows? So my advice would be to ring them and then sort of decide whether you want to believe them or not. If they say don't. It's it's £35 at the moment, but I think it's gone up to 40 from May the 25th. And as foot health practitioners, I know a lot of us keep paper records, and it specifically says in the policy, if you keep paper records, you have to register. But there's the bit which says about automated paper records, paper filing system, because it confused me that some people were being told, yes, you have to register because of keeping a paper record, others were told not. But it appears it's not to do with the fact if you keep a paper record and have it in alphabetical order, it's to do with what's inside the file. So say you have Mr. Jones as a foot health client, for example, and inside you put different filing segments inside, so with all the different data, and you do that for everyone. That makes it into an automated filing system, apparently. Anyhow, that explains that. Now I'll get on to what I've done. Now just sort of clear those little things up. You've registered twice, Belinda. Wow. I think we're going to have to do it twice as well, because my businesses are different to Lawrence's, so we're going to have to do two. But saving up the money. Right, first of all, I mapped my data, and that's worked out quite well, because you kind of see what data you have, and that really is the basis of all what you do afterwards, I think. So I've given an example on the that file I put up. and also there's examples of showing how I did mine. So that's quite straightforward. Map your data, where you collect it, etc. Like for example on mine I've done the consultation form we take personally from the clients, the Google Calendar, which is where we keep our appointments on, the foot client telephone numbers, which we keep in our phone, invoices for people who want receipts for their treatments to claim back from insurance, and then there's the website contact forms. So that's how I divided it up. Okay, so if you do basically do that, and that leads on to show you how to do everything else. Yeah, Belinda. Yeah, you would have to be. Would you have to? Yeah, if it. Yes, was your business forever would be a separate entity, wouldn't it? It's a personal thing in itself. So yeah, you would have to do it for both. Now this is the really crux of the matter. What is your lawful basis of processing? Now this has taken me an awful lot of time. I've changed them, gone from one to another, but it's really the basis of how you write everything else, and how you actually deal with the clients and the data. The lawful bases are consent, contract, legal obligation, vital interests, public tasks, and legitimate interest. This is for Article 6. Now this applies to everyone, no matter what industry you're in. Now if you have special category data like we do with health, then you also have to have one from Article 9. But I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll just talk about the Article 6 at the moment. Now the only possible ones I can see is consent, contract, or legitimate interest. Now legitimate interest would be a really good one to have, because it's flexible and doesn't require consent. But when I rang up the ICO and the chap went through it with me, it didn't. You've got to do a 3-part test for it, and it failed the 3rd one. Doesn't mean to say he was right, of course, but if you do look at it, there's something about it which doesn't seem quite right. But you might want to recheck, ring up the ICO again, like I did, and find out if that might apply. That leaves contract and consent. Now, consent. Now, I'll just mention Article 9 at the moment. The only one I can see we can use is explicit consent for Article 9 for the health data. That's at the moment. Therefore, the chap I was speaking to on the phone said, well, why don't you just do consent for Article 6 as well? I thought, oh yeah, that's okay, until I started thinking about it. Now, if you do consent for Article 6, what happens when people ring up and want a foot booking on the phone? Okay, you're going to be putting their details either in a written diary or on a calendar, and you don't have consent for that. So therefore you'd actually have to, the guy from the ICO said, yes, you'd have to do sort of a spiel, you know, like you hear from these big companies saying, you know, can we have consent to have your data and all that business? So I'm thinking contract is a much better one. Contract has you can have pre-contract information, etc. So that would cover you, from the way I'm looking at it here, it will cover you for all that information you collect before you actually see the person. So that's the one I'm going down the road with at the moment. Now, and also you don't have to get consent for that. You do, and obviously just mention it in everything you're doing, you know, all your documentation. Now the Article 9, now I'm going for explicit consent because I can't see that any of the others possibly would fit. unless you're a podiatrist. There's 9H, which is processing for healthcare by a health professional. And first of all, I was hoping that would fit for health practitioners, because that would make it so much easier. None of this consent business. But I had a very in-depth conversation with the ICO on that, and it's their opinion that we are not health professionals being a foot health practitioner. Now, podiatrists, if that could be the case, I'm sure they probably are, but you would, again, if you're a podiatrist, please check, because they do have these funny sort of reasons for listing people on certain lists, so you might want to check. So therefore that left explicit consent, which poses an interesting dilemma in terms of keeping consultation forms for 6 or however many years or 7 years afterwards, after the person's last appointment. Okay, because we need to keep them for insurance purposes in case anybody wants to claim. So after the person's last appointment, you need to archive them, apparently in sort of date order, and then destroy them sort of after however many years you need to keep them for, like 7 years, and shred them. Now, by going on explicit consent, that means people who have whose files you got now, who maybe you saw a year ago and you haven't seen since. I'm wondering, do we have to go back, first of all, do we have to go back and get consent from them to keep the forms? Because apparently just holding the form is considered data processing if you just hold it and do nothing with it. In which case, if they refuse to give consent, we're still going to hold them anyway. So it just doesn't make sense, does it? Absolutely does not make sense. But there is another, I just actually was looking at this morning. There's Article 9F, processing is necessary for the establishment, exercise or defence of legal claims or whenever courts are acting in their judicial capacity. Now to me that is just for people, you know, established claims and courts and all that business. But I'm going to check out to see if it also is in case of claims, in which case we could have that one in too, possibly. Now, regarding going on the basis of using explicit consent, which I will be anyway. It might be plus this Article 9 of the legal bit, but I think it's going to be, you have to be explicit consent anyway. It's got to be granular, so you can't lump it all together, and the client has to agree to every different piece of information you hold. And it says it can't be lumped in with your terms and conditions or terms of use. So I'm taking that you can't have one signature for consent for treatment and also for consent to the data. That it has to be separate. So you'd have them sign the consultation form to consent to treatment if you do that, if you don't do implied consent, and then have a separate signature for the data. But again, it's open to interpretation, really. Right, I have made my notes here, and let's just see what I've got next. Right, going back to the data maps, it's good to put what risks your data at. Like something like a name might be low, name and email might be low or medium. Now, obviously health data is high risk. Now, according to the ICO and the policy, any high-risk data has to be mitigated into a lower band, because if it's high risk, you have to contact them to get their permission to take it. But you can mitigate it. So I've mitigated our high-risk health data by keeping it in locked cabinets. Well, that's what I put anyway, but I'm hoping that brings it down to the medium risk. So I thought I'd just mention that bit. Right, so before the privacy policy, I think it's a good idea to actually, I didn't actually do this in order. I did it all the wrong order totally. I did the data mapping, I did the privacy policy, then I went back to the documentation. But the bit which comes next really would be the documentation and the horrendous Excel spreadsheet. Oh my God. I lost the will at this. I really did lose the will, and I just wanted to throw everything out the window. I just found it horrific, boring, tedious. But anyway, I did it, and I never want to do it again. I've put the link on the that Word document I put up, the link where you can download it. You just basically, you know, sort of just use theirs. You can create your own. I tried to do this in Word and it just all went wrong, so I just used their spreadsheet. I've put up photos of my own in into the document, the Word document, for you to see sort of examples. But actually in the spreadsheet itself, the ICO do, if you look at the bottom, there's notes and some examples, and they'll show you, that's what I went by to put all my information in. And then you've got to like write information, I think. And the bits, I mean, I picked this up from going through the policy, the bits you need to keep. Now, I don't know if as small businesses we have to keep all this information, do all this information bit, but I couldn't find anywhere which said we didn't. So I did it, and then what I did as well is when I rang up the ICO, I actually went through all that with the chap on the other end of the phone, and he never said that I didn't have to keep it. Now, I'm surprised that a small business would have to keep all this documentation. I am very surprised. But I'm doing it, I've done it because I don't particularly want to get it wrong. I thought might as well do it and it's there then, you know. But I just can't see that we should be expected to do all this. But anyway, the area is which I found on, you know, on the policy that we had to keep was a section. I got safeguards for protecting personal data. So it basically is to make sure you've thought about, you know, what you're doing really. So I've written a bit on that. Any data processors, we'll go into that a little bit later about the data processors, because they have to be compliant as well, and you have to have a contract. A bit about consent, where all the data is, and then a bit about the special category data. Now, I've put the lawful basis for it, and then I found this piece which I had to include in this section, and what I did was I copied and pasted it, and then in italics I just wrote the answer of how we actually did that bit. So there's that bit there. Then you've got the technical and organisational security measures, blah blah blah. You can read all this anyway. How we respond and deal with rights of data subjects. You've got to write how you can deal with also, like, if processes for erasure, processes for objections, processes for withdrawal of consent, and processes for right of rectification and accuracy of data held. And the way I've done that, and I'll put a little example is there, is what we're going to do is on the back of the consultation form is a little thing saying every 6 months, say, ask them to confirm there's been no changes, and if there is any changes, write them in and then put them in the file. So I put a little example there. Process, and then there's the processes for security breaches, because you have to let the ICO know within 72 hours of a security breach where feasible, and if it's likely to be a high risk of affecting individuals' rights, you've got to let all the individuals know. Anyway, you've got to keep a record of all the personal breaches. And what I found interesting was, if you lose a bit of information, that's a security breach. I mean, I know logically it is, but say you mislay a file or something, easily done. Okay, Belinda, I'm really pleased you came. Thank you. Right, okay, and then your security policy, how you're going to secure the data, and I think I've repeated myself on this from another one. Now, it's another interesting bit, data protection impact assessment, which is only supposed to be these big companies, you know. But because of collecting special category data, we have to consider it. So I considered it and decided that we didn't have to do it, but you have to write that out. So there's a section on that, and I've put, we hold special category health data. We need to consider if we need to undertake a DPIA, which is what they call it. Due to the fact we only collect health data on a small scale, we do not need to undertake a DPIA. Yay! But you have to write that, apparently. Right, and that has to be undertaken once a year. Then there's staff training, if you've got staff, you've got to say about all your training bit. Data protection process reviews. And also you've got to keep records. I'll put an example of our record sheets. From what I can tell, you actually have to have a sheet for all your accesses to information, accesses, data portability, restriction of data processing, and erasure requests, and other requests which you can't actually affect, because some of them you can't. And also there's a section there to put data breaches in, which you need to have a section on. Okay, so that's the documentation bit. That is all very tedious. Right, privacy or privacy policies. Now, yes, a lot of that was sort of a bit of no, I don't know what that was actually. I'm all confused. Basically, I've got, for our business, I've said you need to have a different one for your website, because it's going to have a bit of sort of different information. And I've got that one separate, and I've got the one for the feet, for when people actually come into our clinic, or if you're a mobile, if you were taking it with you to your clients, to their houses. Now I'll describe how I've got it for the clinic, which might be a little bit over the top, I must admit. I've got 3 versions. I've got the main version, which is 2 pages long, and it's what I thought it should be. That was my first one. And then I thought, well, how am I going to display that in the clinic? It needs to be 1 page long to go in an A4 stand. So I thought, haha, shortened version. So I kind of shortened it and made it fit exactly into 1 sheet. But on it I've got, if you would like to access the full version, please ask, or visit the website, because I have put the full version on the website as well. So that's quite handy if you ever need to refer anybody. You say, oh, it's on the website. So that's that bit, and I've laminated the full one, the 2-page one, so that I can just, the clinic can just hand it to them if they do want to read it. And then I started doing the consent form for the data processing for the clients when they come in. And I thought, I started writing us in very easy to read and easy to understand language. And I realised that actually I was writing what's in the privacy policy, but in a very sort of easy way. So I managed to fit all that on 1 sheet, including the tick boxes to sign. And then I have referred them to the shortened policy. I printed on the back of the form the shortened, number 2 shortened policy, and said they must read that. So hence I've got 3 versions. Anyway, on there's the example, and basically there's no point in me really going through it, but if you read what I've put, it kind of explains all the different rights and all that sort of business. You've got to put your lawful basis of processing on there, but you can see I'm not going to go through it all because it's too much detail. But you can see that, and if you've got any questions, ask me, and I'll do my best, even though I don't really know what I'm doing particularly. And then there's a website privacy policy. It's pretty much the same, except for you don't have to get consent, because you're not actually taking, unless you ask people to give health information online, which is probably quite a bad idea. So I haven't. It's just literally for their contacting you, really. So I've put if I just go through, so I've highlighted some things to mention. if your website, it's a good idea to have it as have an SSL, which is secure sockets layer. Make sure your hosting has that, because that has a lot of security in it. So when somebody fills a contact form in, it's securely sent to you, from what I understand. And also you've got all these other things like IP addresses being collected, cookies and all that. And that is just another nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I've just put a little bit about that in until I know more, because I don't really understand it, to be honest. But anyway, I just kind of mentioned it in the best way I could, very vaguely. But this does need addressing, because, you know, at the end of the day, an IP address can be determined as it can be said that it's personal data, because it could whilst if the IP address was a big firm, it wouldn't be. You don't know if that IP address just goes to one person, so in theory it could be personal data. So, and then cookies, cookies are a nightmare. And then on the purpose of processing. Now also on ours we've got a shopping cart on our website, so I don't know if you've got a shopping cart if you sell any foot care products or anything. So for the purpose of processing, just to reply to emails or contact forms and provide information requested or make foot health bookings. And I've also put another line to process and send purchases. The lawful basis of processing, 6B contract, because you only need Article 6, because you're not taking any health data. But I have put something else in there to cover for the rest. I put, however, should you make an appointment through email or by completing the contact form, the following lawful basis will also be added once you attend your appointment. This is due to the fact we need to take health information, which is special category information, and that is Article 9A consent. And I've given an explanation of the consent, so people know that it's contract for now, but once you actually come to the clinic and undertake a foot treatment, you will be doing the consent form, the consultation form, and the Article 9 will kick in for consent. And then you've got, the details of transfer of the personal data to any third countries or international organisations. Right, now whilst you might not think you're sending any information abroad, if you keep information on Google or any of these other people, your web host server, like I use Weebly, and they're not in the EU, then you've got to consider this. And I'm not totally sure about all this, to be honest with you, but I've just put emails and other information may be kept on Google servers and Weebly, who hosts this website. These are located outside of the EU and UK, and they are in accordance with the GDPR. You've got to make sure anybody you use is. But there's also a US-EU privacy shield as well you need to look out for. But I think if they're GDPR compliant, that overrides that. And also what I've done is I've actually put links to the privacy policies of Google and also of Weebly. So the rest of it is sort of quite straightforward. Right, and then the extra bit I've put in is, please note this website contains links to other websites. Once you have clicked on the link, you will then be governed by that website's privacy and cookie policy, and you have to perform your own due diligence in deciding on whether to browse or use that website. And I've put cookies used on this website. Please read our cookie policy. Right, the cookie policy was Cookiebot. I've used that. I don't know if it's any good, but there's a lot of people seem to be using it. I don't really understand it, but you just sort of, it automatically does it for you. But I think the people who you're hosting your website with, all the different ones, I know Weebly will be doing all that for you. It's just a question of time for it coming into play with them. So I've got the cookie bit on hold, and the cookie policy doesn't actually come under the GDPR, it comes under ePrivacy, and that's not quite coming in yet. So I think we've got a bit of time with the cookie bit. Okay, data processing contracts. this is basically third-party people processing your data. So, for example, if you use MailChimp to do your emails, they're a third-party processor. You need to make sure they're GDPR compliant, and what else? And you need to get a contract. Now, I'm not quite sure how the big companies are doing the contract bit, but if it's somebody a little bit smaller, then you need to do an actual processor contract, because you'll be the data controller and whoever you're giving the data to will be the data processor. Now I'll give you an example. I'm actually a data processor and a data controller for the same business and for the same people who I'm serving. I do some of my therapy courses. The students are sent by another therapy company, so all I'm responsible for is doing the actual practical training day. Now I've had a data processing contract from the therapy company, so I'm a data processor for the information they send me initially about the students for the booking. But when I actually do the practical day for the students, I have to take more information for them, like the health information, because they sort of do the reflexology on each other. So I need to know their health data, and that makes me a data controller. So I'm both on that. I mean, it's ridiculous. I still don't know how eBay works. I haven't got a clue what I am with eBay. I could be a data controller, data processor. So still waiting on that one. So I put an example up of a data processing contract, and I've done it between, well, actually it's somebody who would be processing data for our foot care business in the clinic. So there's certain bits which you've got to put in. The first bit, nature and purpose of processing. This will be different depending on what it's for. But the next bit, the category I name as data processor agree to. That's pretty much what it says on the policy, really. And also, if you're a data processor, you also have to do one of those dreadful spreadsheets as well. And that's on the same page as a data controller Excel spreadsheet. It's a data processor Excel spreadsheet, but it's not as bad. Not half as bad. Right. I've covered everything in my notes. I hope I haven't confused everyone, and I don't know if I got all this right or not. I've just done my best, really, and I would suggest, ring the ICO, do what you think is right, and then ring them and go through it with them. If your professional body can help, that would be really good. They should have, they should have the information. They should be able to help you. Ideally, and this is what quite annoys me about this, what you need is a data processing specialist, data protection specialist who is a solicitor or a lawyer to do this. And most of the bigger companies, they can afford to do all that. They don't have to really think about it. I certainly am not in a position to go out and get a solicitor or a lawyer in to do this for me, and there's no consideration of that by the ICO. And you ring them up and they can't even tell you what to do. That makes me laugh. They can guide you, but they can't. You still have to understand what it's about. I just think it's so wrong, really, that we're having to do all this. I agree that there should be data protection for people. Has it got to be done in such a complex way like this? I don't know. Anyway, I will go now. Thank you all for listening. Got any questions, just let me know. And we're not going to let this beat us, are we? Okay, bye for now. Thank you.